Well, you'll be hearing the word constitute or derivatives thereof a lot in the show today because the Constitutional Court has ruled that the government's use of states of public emergency between 2018 and 2023 as a crime-fighting tool were unconstitutional. The court also found that the government failed to establish what an emergency is as outlined in the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms. The PNP hailed the ruling as a landmark decision, and it says it affirms the rights of the people and also raps the government on the knuckles for seeking to circumvent the parliament when making decisions such as the imposition of an SOE. The government says it will appeal. That's up for discussion on the story today on CVM TV. So the Constitutional Court handing down a ruling that the PNP is celebrating this afternoon. Human rights lobby group Jamaicans for Justice also hailing the decision of the court. Meanwhile, the government says it is reviewing and assessing, even as it signals very early in the piece that it will appeal. So what's all the to-do about? Well, here you go.
The Constitutional Court has ruled in favor of the opposition People's National Party's General Secretary, Dr. Dayton Campbell, that multiple states of emergency or SOEs declared by the government between 2018 and 2023 were unconstitutional. The court found that the SOEs, which the government says were intended to combat crime, were not justified under Section 20 of the Jamaican Constitution. It ruled that the executive branch overstepped its authority by declaring and extending the SOEs without proper parliamentary oversight, breaching the separation of powers principle. Furthermore, the court determined that the measures infringed upon citizens' rights to liberty, freedom of movement, and due process. The opposition has since welcomed the ruling, stating that it upheld the Constitution and reinforced the rule of law.
Today's landmark ruling by the Supreme Court of Jamaica is a resounding victory for the Constitution, for the rule of law, and for the people of Jamaica.
Opposition leader Mark Golding emphasized that while addressing crime is crucial, it must not come at the expense of constitutional rights.
The court's decision reinforces that no government is permitted to suspend freedoms under the guise of public safety without meeting the constitutional safeguards of necessity, proportionality, and parliamentary accountability. This win belongs to every Jamaican who values justice and constitutional order.
The opposition has long argued that the government's reliance on SOEs as a primary crime-fighting tool was both ineffective and unconstitutional. The government, through Leader of Government Business in the Senate, Kamina Johnson-Smith, has expressed respect for the court's decision while committing to appealing the matter.
This side that has been committed to ensuring that the security forces have had the tools which they needed to put us in a position to achieve the successes which are being had today. So we respect the ruling of the court. We respect the ruling of the court. We respect also that a part of this democratic system and our justice system also exists the right of appeal. And I am advised that even at this initial stage of review, which is currently being undertaken, that we are quite clear that we will be appealing.
We discuss on Lead Story. Courtney Lewis for Lead Story.
So if this were a tennis match, you'd say advantage PNP, even as the government signals that it will appeal. After the break, the PNP General Secretary.
Everybody, I'm Yendi, and this is Odyssey with Yendi. In this space, we connect with some of your favorite people as they share their journeys. Here we have some unfiltered conversations as we deep dive into their inspirations, motivations, and experiences to inspire our own life journey.
In a world where innovation meets tradition, agriculture is evolving like never before. From the latest sustainable farming technologies to age-old practices passed down through generation, agriculture is
precious to me.
I love the animals. I don't mind getting my hands dirty. I love working.
Join us right here on CVM TV every Sunday during news at 7 as we explore the people, the science, and the breakthroughs that are shaping the way we grow, eat, and live. You don't want to miss it. This is Farming Forward.
The government of Jamaica not fancying anything at the Constitutional Court. They've lost several cases there. This just the latest one. And the PNP General Secretary, the man named as the claimant in this matter, he joins me now to discuss the findings as handed down by the 3 justices who presided over this inside the Constitutional Court. Dr. Campbell, good evening. Welcome back to Lead Story.
Hi, good evening. Good evening to your viewers. Thank you for having me.
In context, for those who are watching you this evening, Dr. Campbell, and wondering what this means, what are the implications of this ruling, tell us about that through your perspective.
Well, I think this is a monumental victory for the people of Jamaica because it is one that will ensure that their rights are protected. We do have a right of movement, and we do have a right to be free. And what we think was happening was what the former the former Attorney General had said when she said, infringe, abridge, and abrogate the rights of persons in an attempt to capture a few persons that they would deem as violence producers. We all agree that violence producers should be removed from the society, and the government has said that there are about 300 of those persons. I think the disagreement is how we go after them. We have said that normal intelligence-led policing, and the leader even went as far as proposing a court-supervised provision procedure that would allow us to detain those persons while the police build a case. But to use the net fishing approach via the state of public emergency, we thought that you should not take away the rights of 3 million people in your pursuit of 300 violence producers. Additionally, during the time that the states of emergency were in place, we saw where cases were not being brought against persons who were detained, as very few charges were laid. And we saw after 2018, when it just started, there was a decrease from what had gone out of control with a murder rate of 1,600 and I believe 47 in 2017, that it dropped just below 1,300, but then it was gradually climbing back to the point where in 2022 it got to 1,500. So obviously the state of public emergency was not working to curtail murders. Now that we're using normal policing, which is what we've always recommended, we see where last year the murder rate came down to 1,141. Not where we want it to be, but certainly an improvement, the best year out of the last 8 years for this government, without the use of SOEs. And so we think that this is a good day for the people of Jamaica, and that we will be able to continue to fight crime while preserving the rights of our citizens.
I'm going to revisit the issue of the efficacy of policing just a little bit later, Dr. Campbell, but you said something about this ruling striking one for the rights of citizens, and that was one of the substantive orders that the court handed down. The issue of Dayton Campbell's standing to bring this matter before the court, that was one of the significant issues because the government's attorneys argued against your standing. What did the court say about your legitimacy to have brought this action in the Constitutional Court?
Well, you know, I think the government was trying to make the point that I myself was not affected by the measures or by any, I wasn't detained under any SOE. But that's not the point that we were making. We're challenging the fact that the way in which the state of public emergency was being used is not what is outlined in Section 20 of the Constitution, and that we do not see medically, I'm medically trained, when you call something an emergency, it's not a chronic situation that you're referring to. Our crime problem is a chronic problem that we've had for many years. That would not meet the definition of an emergency. And I'm also very happy with the point about the separation of power, because that is a fundamental part of our system of governance. And what had happened was that the government would declare a state of public emergency, allow it to expire after 14 days, not go to the parliament, but then just declare a new state of public emergency in a way to circumvent the parliament of the land. And that is not good. That is the beginning of tyranny. And we are very happy that the court was able to point out that this is in breach of the separation of powers, and that the government will now have to, if there is a need for an emergency and the criteria is actually met, that for an extension to take place, it will have to be voted on in the parliament.
Yeah, well, you're the main man in this issue, so I'm happy you are, because you won't be able to tell me that, well, I have to ask a lawyer. So here's the thing. For the benefit of the viewers, why is it that Jamaica's pervasive crime problem, and maybe even in that I'm giving away the answer, but the crime situation pervades, it is bad year on year. An ordinary person may be thinking, why was the court unconvinced that this state of affairs constitutes an emergency in the way the government interpreted it? What did the court say specifically on that?
Because of the specific provision is there. And if persons have that concern, they can read section 20 as to the provision that is there, as to what would necessitate the declaration of a state of public emergency. And that is not by our perennial crime problem. That is by other elements within the society. Take, for instance, the incursion in Tivoli in 2010, I believe it was.
Yes.
That would meet the threshold to say that this is an emergent situation. But just the routine problems that we are having, what we need to do are some of the things that are being attempted now, which is to focus on intelligence-led policing. And as I said before, the leader of the party had put forward a mechanism that would allow us to target those individuals and for a court-supervised procedure to be in place to build a case against them.
Yeah.
But to just go ahead and detain persons for as much as 9 months without them being charged is obviously unconstitutional.
So just to be clear, the court did say that an emergency is restricted to a natural disaster, a hurricane or an earthquake, or an attempt, just like 2010, you gave the example, of an attempt by forces to subvert the rule of law and to emerge as a clear and present danger to the state. That's the definition of emergency that the court accepted, not the one that the government advanced.
Correct. And as I said, I think in the normal course of things, most persons would agree that that would be what would constitute an emergency. And the fact that we are able now to get the numbers down, where last year was the best year for this Andrew Willis-led administration from 2016. And there was absolutely no state of public emergency declared last year. They had the best year in terms of the number of murders.
On the efficacy of policing now, what about those who say, and the police have said so themselves, perhaps not this police commissioner, but the one before him, under whose charge the SOE were declared, will tell you that the strategy which is yielding results now, the strategy involved the application of SOE at that time to complement the tactics that supported the broad strategy to present the results that we are seeing now. Do you buy that argument?
I don't. And let's look at the evidence why I don't buy it. When this government took office in 2016, the year before, 2015, the number of murders in Jamaica was 1,208. And that was the highest of the 4 years by the PNP government, because 2014 was 1,005. They put in place a Minister of National Security, Robert Montague, who I think was promoted above his competence. By 2017, we had 1,647 murders. They started the SOEs in 2018. It came down to 1,287. So it still was not lower than the worst year under the previous PNP administration. We then had the numbers gradually climbing back up to when we got to 2022, we had 1,500 murders with several SOEs being declared. Obviously, it was not effective, and it was not, because what you had was just a balloon effect. The very Prime Minister himself, in going to some areas in St. Elizabeth, is bemoaning the fact that some normal peaceful areas in some rural communities are now display some of the criminals from areas like Montego Bay and other parts of Jamaica to these remote areas out in rural Jamaica. But you just by looking at the numbers, we were not charging anybody.
Yeah. Hold that
we
point.
were not building any cases against anyone.
Hold that point, Dr. Campbell. Let's finish this up after this break. This is Lead Story. The PNP General Secretary is here, the party exultant, believing that a significant point has been struck for the rule of law and for the rights of citizens as per the ruling of the Constitutional Court in this matter of the government's imposition of states of public emergency between 2018 and 2023. More after these.
Private room, only $1,000 for a grand time.
That I know me. We never said that. But who going believe me?
That is correct. $4,350,000. Yes, go ahead. $4 million? I never approved that.
Yes, me go doctor tomorrow. So me have to get the money today, no longer. Then no me face that. I never make no record, I beg nobody no money.
Deepfakes are AI-generated images and videos made to look and sound like people we know and trust. They're used to spread misinformation, destroy reputations, and are used to commit fraud and scams. Don't fall victim to deepfakes. Protect yourself. For more information, visit broadcastingcommission.org or scan the QR code on screen.
Three justices of the Constitutional Court ruling against the government in their use of states of public emergency between 2018 and 2023, saying that the use was unconstitutional and defending the right of Dr. Dayton Campbell, the PNP General Secretary, to bring the claim, saying he does have standing as a citizen of Jamaica who's interested in the rule of law being maintained. And they say, listen, somebody bringing an action like the one he does not have to be personally affected by the circumstances of the case to properly be able to bring such a challenge. Dr. Campbell is with me. Just one more on this efficacy argument, Dr. Campbell, because some looking on will say, well, it would not be sensible to expect that the imposition of SOE at the start would have yielded the results that we're seeing now, because one, the then police commissioner under whose charge they were declared, Major Anthony Anderson, did say that the results wouldn't be immediate, that it would take some time. And the fact is that the police say the SOE was a major disruptive tool that would break up the strongholds that gangs had on certain communities, break up the networks, and in splintering them, weaken the coordination that they had and the network that they had to evade the police and continue perpetrating crimes. This was not tested by the court, but this is a ramification of why you went to court. You're not buying that argument, I'm supposing.
No, and the current Commissioner of Police, Dr. Blake, probably wouldn't be buying it either. I think we can conclude that former Commissioner Major Anderson was just not successful as a commissioner. If you look at, again, the last PNP administration from 2012 to 2015, those 4 years, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, those 4 full years. Last year, the best year for this government, is still worse than 2 of those years. It is worse than 2012, where we had just 1,102. It is worse than 2014, where we had 1,005. So even now, they still have not gotten back to being better than those years. And during those 4 years, we did not use any states of public emergency. Now, in fighting crime, That is one approach. But there is also the other approach of preventing crime, building the community relationship, information gathering, using legislation. So we passed DNA Act, we passed anti-gang legislation. The government just simply was using a brute force approach, which was not yielding any result. Under the state of public emergency, from 2019 up to 2022, we saw an increase in the number of murders, not a decrease. Now that the government is going after the violence producers, because I've always said, how is it that the government is telling us that there are 300 violence producers? Majority of the murders are gang related. Why aren't you able, therefore, to target those persons and to build a case against them? By information-led policing, which is what they have been forced to do now, and it is yielding the results. If the government had pivoted to doing that from earlier, we would have prevented some of the lives that were lost.
Not much has changed. Well, in terms of the personnel, but of course responsibilities have changed because we now have a commissioner who's a year old in the job. Fitz Bailey, the former head of the crime portfolio, is gone. But the police high command retains some of the same members who partnered with Major Anderson when these SOE were being implemented. And you know how these things work. State of emergency is not imposed by a prime minister ivy towered at Jamaica House or a cabinet who is ensconced also at Jamaica House. It is based on a recommendation from the police. So do you not give make any allowance for the fact that this was a tool the police say they wanted at that time to cause a disruption in their crime fighting strategy?
I believe it was a mistake from Major Anderson. I believe it was also government policy. So I don't believe that this was without the involvement of the government. This was obviously government policy as well. Now, a change in strategy, change in leadership makes a difference, as it will in Jamaica. A change in leadership and a change in strategy will make a difference. We have a new commissioner that's pursuing a different approach and is getting better results, right? The numbers are there to bear me out on that. Last year was the best year for this government out of their 9 years. And this year, you're seeing a further 40% decrease on last year.
Let me ask you.
Without any state of emergency.
Let me ask you. Even though, well, this thing, I mean, the chairs are still being moved around and the music is still playing, so nothing is quite settled. The government has indicated its intention to appeal. But as things stand now, if it is that it goes to the next step and the decision holds, would the PNP be minded to assist some of those or all of those who felt aggrieved at being detained under what the court has said were unconstitutional use of power? If they say they want to challenge the government, will the PNP stand with them and support their challenge against their detention?
We haven't had any such discussions as yet, but I do know that there is an exposure of the government at this point in time. And remember that there was a previous ruling, where I think about 5 individuals, the court had ruled in their favor that they were detained unlawfully and that it was unconstitutional. So I suspect we are going to see persons that are going to seek redress and going to seek compensation. And I think the government really, as opposed to appealing this decision, they need to let good sense prevail. They know this is not an emergency condition as is outlined in the Constitution. They know that, right? There are persons within the Labour Party who are very qualified at interpreting the law. So they know that it doesn't meet the criteria. I don't know why they are pursuing this path. And I think it will only cost the country and expose the country to more lawsuits in the future.
One final one, Dr. Cam, I know you have to go elsewhere. For the Jamaicans watching you and listening to you, and perhaps not being clear on the PNP's stance on crime and the crime reductions. In this interview, you've said that you welcome the gains being made and you're highlighting the gains being made with the numbers. But they say, well, you go to court to challenge something that the government says will ultimately end up in the murder rate, the overall major crimes going down. May you use the final couple minutes you have on this program, Dr. Campbell, to restate the PNP's position on crime and how it sees the management of the crime portfolio, especially by the JCF at this time.
Well, our mandate is not to be an accomplice, a party to a failed policy by the Labour Party. The SOE was not working. I said to you, if you look at the numbers, for 2018 when they started, it came down significantly from 2017. But I believe they had the wrong minister in place. There's a minister that was saying he's a warrior man, he's not afraid of anybody. He wasn't being serious, right? They were not putting any serious measure in place to deal with it. But since 2018, if you look at the numbers, they were steadily increasing, where 2022 we got back to 1,500 murders per year. What we are saying, both of us agree that there is a problem, is how you treat with it.
Yes.
The leader of the party said normal policing measures is what we used between 2012 and 2015, and we had lower rates than you've ever had if you exclude last year, right? And even if you use last year, 2 or 4 years, still lower. And he went further to say, here, I have devised a mechanism here that you can use with a court-supervised procedure. This government has promised enhanced security measure in. That legislation has not come.
Yeah.
Right? So what we're saying is that we are for protecting our citizens against criminals. We believe that those criminal elements in the law should deal with them. We do not believe that the rights of the other citizens should be taken away.
The comrade leader and the spokesman on citizen security, Dr. Campbell, have made great play parsing the commendations. They say, hail the police commissioner and the men and women he leads. No credit for the national security minister. Would you give this national security minister any credit for the gains we've made where major crime reduction is concerned?